Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to welcome you today to our webinar, which focuses on understanding the new SIA license link qualifications. My name's Paul Kelly, and I'm the Quality Assurance and Compliance Manager here at SFJ Awards, and I'll be hosting today's event. We have a firm commitment to the all-encompassing concept of quality assurance, where we always work to ensure the aims of any assessment match the aims of the qualifications itself and the aims of all the stakeholders in the sector. To do that, it's vital that we support the confidence, value, and impact for both learners and employers in the qualifications we award. As we go through today's session, please add your questions via the Q&A feed at the bottom of the screen, and we will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. Any questions raised today that we don't have time to answer during the webinar will be circulated soon after the event. And if you don't mind, I would like to ask you to put your name and job title into the chat function, also found at the bottom of the screen. I hope you will enjoy the presentation today and recognize that our approaches will really support you in delivering these new qualifications. And in recognition of your participation in this event today, I'm pleased to tell you that you're receiving an SFJ Awards Certificate of Attendance. Joining me today will be one of our senior EQAs, Jane Hodder. Jane has many years of experience of external quality assurance in the security sector, and will be taking you through the key changes in these qualifications and the importance of the Get Training document. And I'm delighted to say that Tracy Lilly is also joining us today. Tracy is a senior manager at the SIA in the Quality and Standards team, and Tracy will be available during the Q&A session at the end for any queries you may have. Okay, to get us underway today, I'd just like to take a little poll just to see how everyone is doing. Okay, so you got options on the screen, so let me know what's happening out there. Responses coming in. Is anyone like me wondering why there's not a sixth option for looking forward to gin on Friday night? Well, let's see what those responses show. And here we go. All right, busy but productive. It's nice to see it's up there. Yes, I certainly understand that. I'm not being busy and productive and having a good day. Oh, very, very positive then. So you passed the test, so I will continue. Thank you for sharing your thoughts today. Brilliant. Okay, first, let me tell you a little bit more about SFJ Awards. Some delegates might know us very well, others not so much. We have many years of successfully and proudly developing and delivering a number of regulated vocational and technical qualifications at all levels from 1 to 7. This track record also includes externally quality assuring a variety of assessment methods and associated assessment criteria, including MCQs, professional discussions, scenarios, and practical activities. We have many subject expert associates to draw on, and an established internal team across delivery, assessment, quality assurance, and system support, all in place to manage quality standards and manage your learners. We, of course, offer a range of security qualifications, so the point of this afternoon, including the SIA license-linked qualifications. SFJ Awards are experiencing highly regulated health, safety, protection sectors such as policing, probation, and emergency services. We understand the importance of skills that protect the public in key sectors, private security, and at large-scale public events. Okay, with a little bit more interaction for our delegates now. So I'm really interested to know how prepared for the launch of the new qualifications people are feeling out there. So can I ask you to rate your preparedness on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most prepared? And with all of these things, go with your gut feeling, something that's the front of your mind. And for assessors out there, I understand this isn't standardized. So someone's 3 might be someone else's 4. I'll live with that. Okay, results are coming through now. It's going to be very interesting to see. Okay, let's have a look at these results. So you can see most people sitting around the middle, isn't it? Sort of very much a mid-range. Some people confident at the top. So not very interesting. And if it'd been all fives, I guess I could have ended the webinar there and moved on. So it's good to know we've got a purpose here, and hopefully that the slides I'll go through will boost people's confidence further, and we've got that Q&A as well to iron out any details if people are a little still unsure by the time we get to the final slides. Okay, let's look at the qualifications then and units that are changing. Here you can see the qualifications and the common units and the associated units that have been updated and are set to be relaunched in April by SIA, the sector body responsible for regulating the private security industry, just if people weren't sure. SIA carried out this review in order to meet regulatory requirements in response to new risks they identified and the inevitable changes in working practices, and therefore where skills need to be refreshed. This review, as you'll know, was extensive, and the process included consultation with numerous stakeholders, including awarding organisations such as SFJ Awards. The focus on these qualifications is on both knowledge and the demonstration constructs, as you can see from the qualification or unit titles of principles for the knowledge side and working and application for the more practical elements. Okay, Jane is now going to highlight some of those key changes for you.
Good morning, everyone. Really nice to be here this morning. I'm hoping that the poll changes by the end of this and I give you sufficient information going forward. But of course, there are also question and answers at the end of this session. One of the most important changes for the new specifications is the fact there is no longer disparity across awarding bodies in terms of content and methods of assessment. These will now all be the same. In terms of methods of assessment, if multiple choice questions are required, each awarding body will provide the same number of questions that candidates must answer. If practical assessment is required, this will also be the same. So it will be across the board for all awarding bodies. For the common unit, now known as Paul mentioned, principles of working in the private security sector, there will be a practical report writing exercise. This is something I've always been wanting for the sector, as it's so important, especially for those roles such as mobile patrol and CCTV, where the customer may not see the operative, but may see the reports and will therefore judge the standards of their operatives by this written communication. So I think this is a really, really important new step within the specifications. For this, the learners will be given scenarios that reflect their chosen learning route. So there will be a different scenario for each sector. For instance, there'll be a scenario specifically for CCTV, one for doors, one for security officer, and they will be required to complete a report. This report will be internally marked and there will be details as to the specific content required. The reports and judgments will be checked at EQA visits, and the learner must meet the standards and cover a number of key areas. And really, it goes with our normal training. They need to cover who, what, why, where, and how. So the things we're expecting is who's written the report, the date of the report, where the incident happened, the time of the incident, what they saw, did, etc. The signature of the report author. We're also expecting, it should go without saying, but just as a reminder, good practice. So making sure that within that report, if there are any errors, they are crossed out with a single line, not scribbled out, they write in pen, etc. So that's report writing for you. Another new addition is the use of communication devices. And I say communication devices a lot of people are interpreting that as radios. It's not necessarily radios. However, I would suggest that the devices used fit in with the role. The devices detailed in the specification at the moment are radios, mobile phones, internal telephone systems, and internal tannoy systems. But you could use things like earpieces for door supervision. It'd be really useful to use the things that they're going to find themselves using in their particular role. This is a really new thing. The communication assessment will require 15 minutes of video recorded activity. However, I have checked with my colleague here, Tracy Lilly, and she informs me that we are able to conduct these activities holistically. And for instance, I would say that the communication assessment could be done very nicely with the practical for the CCTV. So when the operatives are going to be using their radio to track suspects, they'll be using phones to contact the police. So that would be a good way to holistically assess communications with that CCTV unit. As previously, for door supervision and security officers, there will be practical activities for both searching and conflict management. However, these will also be required to be video recorded. There's a bit of a pattern here. The suggested time for each of these activities is 15 minutes, which sounds a lot, but particularly with searching, it is important to cover all aspects, including the approach and the different circumstances operatives may find themselves in, such as routine searches, dealing with search refusal, dealing with finding contraband, completion of the documentation, and the whole searching procedure, such as obtaining consent, dealing with people who might not be cooperative, etc. For conflict management, we need to ensure that our learners are able to deal effectively with difficult situations, avoiding escalation, and also avoiding the need to adopt physical intervention if at all possible. It is far better for them to practice these skills in the classroom than a real life situation, and we really need to prepare our learners for the role, which can involve difficult and confrontational situations at times. As part of the changes, there is also much more emphasis on terror threat awareness. We have seen incidents such as that at the Manchester Arena, and this has highlighted the need for operatives to have further training in dealing with such incidents. At the moment, because of the pandemic, one of the things, it isn't happening as much, but as we come out of lockdown, there will be obviously more incidents of terrorism. Not only for the learners is it important for them to understand terrorism, it is also now a requirement for assessors and verifiers to update their knowledge as part of their CPD using the link on the SIA website for ACT training. Good plug for Tracy there. For physical intervention, there has been more emphasis on the avoidance of techniques that can cause harm, particularly positional asphyxiation. This has been highlighted as there have been a number of incidents that have resulted, unfortunately, in the death of subjects. Only just recently, I read an article on the BBC News where Metrolink staff in Manchester have been convicted of unlawful killing, where physical intervention methods resulted in a fatal heart attack of an individual. And it is really important that the industry ensures inappropriate physical intervention is avoided. We do not want any deaths or indeed any injuries. Physical intervention will be assessed in a similar way as we do now with the practical and multiple choice questions. However, the multiple choice questions will be different than we do now at SFJ, in that they will be externally marked by the awarding body, not internally marked. Also, which I think is very important, there will be question and answer as part of the physical intervention assessment to confirm further understanding from the learners. Important, as they need to understand why they take actions as well as how, and we need to combine competence with knowledge. All the physical intervention assessment activity is required to be video recorded. This has always been the case at SFJ, but now applies to all awarding bodies. Again, we've got rid of that disparity. The recording will be sampled on EQA visits, so it is important to store and label this evidence effectively. It can also be checked by the SIA during inspections. The recommended recording time, you've probably guessed this one, is 15 minutes. There is also some physical intervention knowledge content within the security officer training. This is not to encourage the use of physical intervention within that role, but to prevent it being used inappropriately. Finally, as well as the changes for the training for the new operatives, there is also a requirement for top-up training as licenses expire for door supervision and security officer. So this is similar to the upskilling for door supervision that was implemented as the requirement for physical intervention training came in. The units are for door supervisors, principles of using equipment relevant to working as a door supervisor in the private security industry, and principles of terror threat awareness in the private security industry. And it includes use of equipment, and that will be new equipment such as body cameras that wasn't in the last spec, updated terror threat awareness, which I've mentioned is really important, physical intervention skills refresher training, which will include both knowledge and practical, and knowledge around critical incidents, for instance, where to access government guidance on pandemic responses, which, as we know, is really important at the moment. Door supervision top-up training is 2 to 3 days, depending if distance learning is used. For security officers, there are 2 units: principles of minimising personal risks for security officers in the private security industry, principles of terror threat awareness in the private industry, security industry even. And there it includes knowledge of physical intervention, updated terror threat awareness, and again, knowledge around critical incidents. That's half a day, whether there's distance learning or not. And you could put distance learning as additional training anyway for both of those areas. Both also include an emergency first aid at work qualification or equivalent, which must be completed before the top-up training is undertaken. For the units, assessment for both door supervision and security officer is by MCQs, and not very many of those, 5 I believe, and door supervision also includes physical intervention practical assessments to ensure skills are up to date, as I mentioned. As we all know, the security role is a very practical one, and therefore it is important the assessment has elements that demonstrate the application of knowledge, and this has very much been reflected in the changes for April for the specifications. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, so another important change to the new qualifications to be aware of is the requirement for learners to hold a first aid certificate before starting their license link qualifications. And at this point, Tracy is just going to give us a quick contribution as she has an important update for you. Tracy.
Lovely, thanks Paul, and thanks for letting me attend this webinar. I appreciate the opportunity, and hello to everybody that's here in attendance. Yeah, the update really that I wanted to give relates to a little bit more information that we've now published around this particular prerequisite. We've wanted to make it easier for individuals to establish what would be accepted. So what we've looked to do is look at what you as a training provider might want to find for evidence, so i.e. a learner presents you with a certificate, what are the points that you need to be looking for to make sure it's valid, and also what you can do if you're wanting to deliver that particular first aid qualification yourself. So the guidance is now on the gov.uk website. It is also included in our FAQs that are on the gov.uk website, and I'm sure that following this event, Paul will make sure that that link is shared with everybody so that you can go directly to that particular source reference. Ultimately, what we're asking for is that we're asking centres to follow the HSE guidance. So we're not expecting people to step out of that guidance. That is there for employers, that it's there for training providers. So we're mirroring our requirements to that particular document. So yeah, so hopefully Paul will be able to share that link with you following this event so that you've got a little bit more information. Lovely. Okay, back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much for that update, Tracy. Okay, so although the learner must have completed and passed the first aid qualification, SIA have confirmed it's acceptable if the actual certificate has not been published yet by the awarding body and is not yet available, then the centre may instead seek valid alternative evidence, sources of evidence of completion, possibly from the previous centre in the meantime. Centres can, of course, deliver their own first aid qualification before starting security training, but this must be completed first and be at least a day in duration. The Health and Safety Executive and SIA, as you just heard hot off the press from Tracy, both publish guidance on acceptable first aid qualifications, and the details that are too much to go into here. We'll make sure you have those links. Please leave any questions you have at the end as well for the end, and we'll try to deal with those as we can. Suffice to say, our qualification is accepted by SIA. Okay, I'm just going to hand back over to Jane for a couple of minutes just to explain the importance of the GET training.
We have, or rather the SIA have issued the GET training document, and I would strongly recommend that all centres refer to it on a regular basis, because that is the main guide to all the changes. It covers all the requirements and a lot of the questions that you have, including numbers of days and hours of training, rules on distance learning, which includes consulting with the awarding body, just as a hint, required qualifications and experience of assessors and verifiers, because these are going to change very much. They're going to have formal qualifications going forward, exam procedures, methods of assessment, which I've covered, I hope, in quite a lot of detail now. English requirements, these have not been changed, but it is really important that we do document things like speaking and listening. Everyone tends to do reading and writing very well, but speaking and listening is something that sometimes it is not covered. So the document will be continually updated, so it's probably wiser to check it's online rather than print off a copy that may go out of date quickly. The latest one has been changed quite a number of times, and I've stopped printing them off. So as an awarding body, we are here to support you, but please refer to GET training first, as most of the answers are in the document. But of course, we're happy to clarify any areas you are not sure about. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. So some of the key bits in GET training now I'd like to run through with you, but as Jane says, it's intended to be a working document, GET training, and it will be updated. So we'll keep sending out latest versions as and when, keep checking links, and just check with us if you're not sure if you've got the latest version. Okay, so moving on to look at sector competence requirements. Approved trainers and assessors seeking to deliver licence-linked qualifications must have successfully completed a range of formal qualifications and training, which you can see on the screen. All trainers and assessors must have achieved these three minimum requirements. Firstly, an award in education and training, level 3, or a teaching or training qualification at level 3, which has been accredited by the regulators or validated by a university, or any other equivalent qualification, such as Cert Ed or PETALS. There's quite a list. Secondly, There is the requirement for a National Counter-Terrorism Security Office / SIA endorsed counter-terrorism program, such as ACT. And this training must be completed annually. I know Jane highlighted some of the key points of this in a previous discussion. Coming up though, a more bespoke version of ACT for the security industry is coming this summer. And this will also be required as an enhancement in due course. ACT is not a requirement for trainers delivering close protection, by the way, until this qualification is redeveloped, but is considered good practice. And finally, a level 3 assessor and assessment qualification is needed, for which there are many valid usual suspects that I'm sure you are familiar with. Next, I'd like to talk about internal quality assurance, or IQA for short, if you get sick of me using that phrase. If anything, it's impossible to overstate the importance of centres having effective internal quality assurance processes. IQAs, or internal verifiers, if that's a term you're more familiar with, are key to ensuring assessment standards are met and go such a long way to helping external quality assurance activities that we deliver go smoothly. A thorough and robust internal quality assurance system will often ensure fewer actions resulting from our EQA activities and generally lead to speedier release of results and certificates. All those seeking to undertake internal quality assurance activities for these license-linked quals must have achieved at least a minimum of a level 4 qualification or unit. If IQAs do not hold these units at the launch in April, IQAs will have until the 30th of September 2022 to achieve one. However, IQAs or IVs must also be occupationally knowledgeable across the range of learning outcomes for which they're responsible. I have a lot of respect for IQAs out there, and their role has many important demands, including ensuring practical assessment activities are delivered in fit-for-purpose ways, observing assessment practice, reviewing the assessment process by sampling assessment decisions, leading on internal standardization activities, resolving differences and conflicts on assessment decisions, and that's just a fraction of this role. So in short, a very, very key role. And just to point out, we have IQA template documents on our website to support IQAs if needed. Okay, concerning approval. We have sent out an application form for reapproval for all existing centres, and these are coming back and being processed as we speak today. These forms require centres to declare that they understand the requirements of the Get Training document, including those matters I've been speaking about today and Jane has been emphasising as well, such as IQA and trainer prerequisites. New centres are very welcome to apply for approval, and this is our website to use, or you can leave your contact details today. To achieve SFJ Awards approval status, all our approval criteria must be fully met, and centres must also demonstrate how they will do that over time. During the approval process, we'll ask for a range of evidence that centres have sufficient expertise and resources to deliver our quals, including all those prerequisites, and also a wide range of policies and procedures regarding risk assessment, venue, and all the other elements you would expect as well. We'll, of course, support you through the process and offer any advice as required. We've got a separate approval process for online delivery. So this is in addition to the standard centre and qualification approval requirements and all other SIA and SFJ Awards documents and guidance, which will still apply, including assessment regulations, of course. During the approval process, SFJ Awards have the right to refuse approval if the centre has had any sanctions that place the centre in a high-risk category in the last 12 months, and/or does not have an SFJ Awards approved online platform, which crucially needs to enable live and interactive delivery of training via what SIA call the virtual classroom. Centres must register every course and all learners with SFJ Awards following our requirements process. Course details must be sent to the SIA and SFJ Awards 5 working days before delivery commences. Centres have found this online delivery is a welcome adaptation in continuing times of COVID-19 restrictions. But it's important to remember that this was intended by the regulators and the sector body to be a temporary solution in a difficult situation. For the new qualifications in April, SIA have identified which units and associated learning outcomes that are acceptable for online delivery. So for example, with principles and practices of working as a CCTV operator, well, for learning outcome 1, which is about understanding the principles of CCTV systems and the roles and responsibilities of the control room, well, all assessment criteria are acceptable to be delivered online. However, for learning outcome 8, which is about demonstrating operational use of CCTV equipment, none of the assessment criteria involved here are acceptable delivered online. SIA, with the backing of the sector experts, feel it is appropriate to deliver these practical elements. Remember that distinction that we've been talking about today. So practical elements such as these, such as demonstrating use of CCTV equipment, these can only be delivered during face-to-face training. Online invigilated assessments, also known as proctoring, can be booked via SFJ Awards for an additional fee, and please contact us for further details. SIA have published a requirements document for using virtual learning, which sets out everything you need when it comes to online delivery. We've been sending that out to centres as well. That's available. Let us know if you need that and you've not received it. We've been sending it out alongside Get Training. It's the documents that you need to refer to if you are thinking of using and applying for online delivery. Okay, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. It's the Q&A section of the webinar. So I'm going to have a look that's come through. So it's been hard for me to multitask and talk at the same time. It's a real challenge for me. So I'm going to jump into the Q&A aspect, and also I've saw some popping up through the chat as well. So I will have a look through that section first. Okay, so the first question is about, will we send out IQA requirements at the end of the webinar? So yes, absolutely, we can share those. So in the first instance, for existing centres, we've sent those out as part of that reapproval process, as I mentioned as well. And also new centres, when you apply for approval, we'll make sure you're aware of that. Obviously, from my point of view, we need to know that you're adhering to everything in that list as well. But absolutely, we'll send out whatever anyone needs, and we can share those, yes. Remember, they are available in Get Training and online as well, but just let us know. You probably have follow-up questions to that as well, depending about whether that qualification is suitable for you and your centre. So great, but yes, we can send out exactly what you need as well. Okay, Jane, did you want to make a point on round IQA requirements? Maybe a key thing that you found on the existing quals and you'd like to see either carried over or improved into the new quals?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to think is what you're doing with the IQA, because I found on our existing specifications, IQA has really focused on the paperwork and not on things like the video recording for physical intervention. And we've got to remember now there's a lot more practical assessments going on, such as the radio communication, I shouldn't say radio, communication devices, I'll get that right.
You'll have to watch your own video back, Jane, to pick up that.
Reaching to myself on that one. But there's lots of, as I say, practical assessments, and also I would expect the IQA to be checking the reports, because I don't want to, as an EQA, turn up at a centre and look at the things and be IQAing myself and going, these learners have not passed. And we, you know, with short courses, these learners disappear, you don't want to bring them back in. So I would really, really stress that people get their IQA processes in place and they cover all of the assessments, not just the paperwork. And also something I would encourage as best practice is to conduct observations of the delivery as well. And we don't see much of that or enough of that. And I would say there is an IQA report that you can use on the SFJ website. You can adapt it, we don't mind, you can use your own, but just make sure it's fit for purpose. And the IQA details exactly what they have seen on that learner's portfolio, whether they've seen the report writing, whether they've just looked at the assessment, the practical assessments. So please, please, please detail everything and show me that your IQA is robust.
Thanks, Jane. Very, very thorough answer there. I can also see there's some in the answers section as well, because Tracy's been working hard in the background. So if I get time, I'd like to have a look at those as well and tease some of those out. But they are still coming through thick and fast through the Q&A chat. So keep those coming in, and I'll keep an eye on them as and when. As I said, we'll try to check the chat button for you as well. Okay. Just one that I did see one around first aid, which I'm just starting to think about. I presume Tracy's handling with that one on the screen. In terms of, and I'll ask Tracy to maybe come in on this one as well in a second. So the question was around that aspect of first aid, where learners are completing a course, completed their first aid, and now starting a course with a different centre, and that certificate might not be available. I'll ask Tracy just to come in and clarify some of those points there. So for me, be looking for as maybe a learner portfolio or a statement of results if the certificate's not available. But Tracy, could I put you on the spot and say any other tips?
Of course you can. Yeah. So the guidance that we've put out is, we said there's sort of 3 different things that you could accept. So one obviously would be the certificate. The second would be a copy of the assessment record, so exactly what you've suggested, that's signed by the trainer to say that the learner's achieved, or even an email from the training provider to say, yes, that learner has achieved, we've sent off the certificate, but it's not here yet. So any of those sort of things would be acceptable, because we recognise that not always will a certificate arrive quickly. So yeah, anything like that would be fine.
Okay, brilliant. I'm going to leave you on and have a look some through the answered ones again, see if we can just tease some of those out for a second. I do have a couple more I will come back to as well. So I can see you've answered one, Tracy, around the current pandemic and wondering why is this the right time to be implementing? But yeah, you pointed out that these changes have been in the pipeline for quite a while, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we absolutely have a watchful brief over what's happening, and these changes were due to launch of April of last year, and then September, and obviously have been put back. Particularly in this lockdown, training in the context of security qualifications and others that lead to employment are still acceptable, so they're still delivering. So we are aware that there is still face-to-face training of security qualifications, including physical intervention activity going on. I guess it's just a case of, obviously, as I've said in the response, people have to be very careful and make sure they follow all the health and safety, all the COVID secure, they have PPE, they have 2 metre spacing, etc., etc. But we obviously will keep a watchful brief, and if things do dramatically change over the next few weeks or even into the next few months, we might have to look back at how we deliver remotely and readdress that with off-call support. So yes, we will certainly be keeping a watchful brief over it.
Brilliant, thank you. And I can see the next response you've answered as well. So this question around licensing in more than one sector, I wonder if we could bring Jane on this one as well to support on this one. So this is the question relating to when it covers more than one sector, the practical activity, what ultimately will be undertaken by a security guard in terms of practical assessments compared with the door license applicants. So I know you've again, Tracy, you've started off answering that one. You expect them to be distinct and for those areas to cover. Jane, have you got a take on that question. Can you see which one I'm referring to?
Yeah, and
Thank you.
have to be very pragmatic about this. And you know, if you have to extend the training for them to do 2 practical activities, then so be it, because we have to make sure that those learners go out and their training is fit for purpose. Also, if the most common one is for people to do security officer and CCTV. Now, when we look at the practical for the security officer in terms of report writing, they could do the security officer report, and basically it's a similar pattern. But later on, when they do the CCTV practical, there is also a requirement for them to complete an incident report. So that would be CCTV focus. So I think you've ticked both boxes with that. I don't know if Tracy, you've got anything else on that.
No, I mean, I think the only other point that I made in my response is what we have done, and people will see that when they see the common unit and see the assessment of that, is we have purposely made that qualification bigger to try and ensure that it encompasses everything that we can to be, fit for purpose around license integration. So that's why that unit is so much bigger now, because that then allows individuals to have that as much as we can breadth of knowledge across whichever sector they might work, but recognizing the fact that these are entry qualifications, and if you're going to be deployed into a particular field, then it is down to that employer to give you the right skills and training and on the instructions of your deployment in relation to what you're going to do, so that if there is a need to have a particular additional piece of training, then it would be them. We can only give you, through yourselves, that basic sort of entry level training. So we're trying to cover as many bases as we can with the training, because obviously a lot of times we get asked, well, actually a lot of security officers work not front facing, so what about them? It's trying to make one qualification fit a much wider range, which is much more difficult.
Yeah, no, great points. And I'm going to carry on looking through the answered one. There's important point being made here about how to make sure the physical environment for PI aspects of DS is conducted in the current environment. So obviously under the current COVID-19 and pandemic restrictions as well. And just to emphasize from our view as an awarding organisation, to back up what Tracy said, please always follow any published government guidance to make sure venues and learners and all assessors and trainers are safe. We expect our centres to carry out a risk assessment and make sure everything is being done as it should be. We'll obviously review those, but if you need any further advice, contact me and my team, and we can provide that as well. Thank you to other people who've answered that question around suggestions from Mike, that they've actually used lateral flow tests as part of the training as well. If anyone else wants to pop any other advice or any tips that have helped to make sure things are going safely, feel free to put them into the chat box for your colleagues. Okay, and there's still a couple more ones in chat I want to run through. We're going to move around. Yeah, there's one there. So maybe again, one I could refer to Tracy. So we're about to deliver, is the question, a CP course with, and forgive me, FREC 3 course included. So that's obviously a type of first aid qualification. Would attendees still need to provide a first aid qualification as well, or would that count? Tracy, are you familiar with that one?
Yeah, so CP have always had a first aid requirement, the current spec, and that requirement is that they've got it as a prerequisite. So what we are quite accepting of is that centres will deliver it as a package. So you'll do FREC, the first aid aspect, for the first, however many days, and then the learners will, once they've completed that and achieved, and you've got that achievement because you're the tutors, you're the people signing it off, then they'll move on to doing the CP. So that's absolutely fine, and it's exactly what happens now. So there's no problem with that at all. There was a question, I think, in the chat around when CP is going to change.
Yes, just above.
Yeah, and that is going to change, but obviously it's on a slightly later timescale than the rest of these. So we are looking at the moment at October, and the reason we're looking at October and later is because CP is going to change quite significantly. We need to make sure that the license integration rules work better. So there's going to be that consideration. So there's going to be some training in there, things around licensing laws, queues and crowds, which are obviously critical if you're CP licensed but working in the door sector. The result is going to be physical intervention requirement. Some of it will be doors related, some of it which will be CP specific, which we're still in the process of devising, which is why we're on a slightly later timescale than the others.
No, thank you, and yeah, and well done for spotting that one. There's a couple more that have come through as well. So there's one I've received that says, I have worked as an IQA at a number of centres and not always felt supported in my assessment decisions. What advice do you have for IQAs that are pressured by heads of centres into confirming assessments that might not be correct? So I'm just going to read between the lines for that one and redirect, get some advice from Jane in a second as well. So I think that the question is saying an IQA, so an internal quality assurer, is looking at work within a centre. They feel possibly that some of the criteria has not been met, but maybe the head of centre has other pressures, an eye on pass rates, as maybe a bit skewed a bit away from quality, and an IQA saying, I feel pressured, and they do say it's not at their current centre as well. So for me, my answer, before I'll throw over to Jane as well, is to follow the IQA process that's embedded and in place at that centre. So the centre was approved on that basis, that to be an IQA process in there. So point to that policy, point to that process, stand your ground in a nice way, say, look, this is what we've committed to do as a centre for this awarding organisation. It doesn't say which one it is in the question. So point to what the evidence is saying you need to do to meet your role, and also educate people, I think, in centre as well. You should be, as I've tried to emphasise, and Jane has as well, the IQA role is so important that you should be one of the first people to come in to talk to, they're getting advice on. IQAs can see that kind of big picture across different assessments, possibly across different learning outcomes as well. So is that something you might have noticed in your experience, Jane? Sometimes IQAs could go out on a limb a little bit.
No one's ever pointed it out to me, but I would back you in standing firm, and I would query what's the IQA there for, and what are you being paid for as an IQA? And I would also say, if you're asked to do that and you do it, then people like myself are going to come into the centre and bounce things back, and I'm going to query your IQA process. And do remember that the security, and we do laugh about this with Jay, the security arena is very, very small, and everybody knows everybody else. And if you get a bad reputation as an IQA, you really cannot afford to do that in this sector. So stand firm, and do you actually want to be working for that organisation? Ask yourself.
Brilliant. Fully endorse that. Okay, in the Q&A, I can see a couple more chats up, and thank you. I'll try and every time I have a look when Jane's having an answer, I'll try to read what's come through. But there's another one. When do you think you'll be able to confirm DS commuted to SG, does to security guard if they wish to change licensing on renewal and top up requirements? So is that something Tracy or Jane could help me out with?
Yeah, I think it's a response to a previous question. So,
I think it is.
Yeah, a previous question asked about whether if an individual was currently a door license holder, but they tended to predominantly work in SG work, whether rather than doing the top up for doors and relicensing at doors, they could switch and just do the SG top up and then get an SG license. And my response at the time was, we are looking at that at the moment to see whether it's possible. And obviously they're asking, when are we going to have an answer? And unfortunately, it's a really difficult one for me to say, because we are hoping that we can make that decision internally, as in within us as a regulator. But because it's a change to the document get licensed, and that's a Home Office document, we might have to go back to Home Office for their approval. And obviously, as you can all appreciate, the Home Office are busy with a lot of other fairly critical things at the moment. So we're in the process of negotiating with them to be able to make those sorts of decisions ourselves, because we recognise, A, it would be a good thing to do, and B, we need a decision quickly. So as soon as I've got that decision, I will disseminate that across to awarding organisations who can then let the centres know, because we are being asked by big employers and by lots of people this exact question, but I just don't have an answer at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, no problem. No, appreciate your honesty as well. And so then there's a next question down referred to that as well, Tracy, in terms of it talks about top-up training again back in QA. So if the security officer holds a level 2 PI qualification at the time of top-up training, October 21, will this cover their knowledge in the subject? Is that something that refers back to the previous question? Just wonder if Tracy could have a look at that one for me.
Tracy, oh, your mic was off.
No problem. I can move on to another question to give Tracy some thinking time as well. Okay, I got another one that's also come through. So my centre are always happy to respond to actions given to us by our EQA, but what can we do if we don't agree that some of the actions are fair? So I'll do the thing where I'll have a go first of all, and then Jane can have an input as well. So firstly, thank you. It's great to know if it is one of our centres that you respond to our actions. Obviously, we're committed to working with our centres as closely as possible. In the end, we've got to protect our qualifications and make sure what's awarded is exactly what should be, but also that the learner does come first. So if there is any kind of mismatch between a centre and awarding body, it's the learner that's going to suffer. So we're going to do what we can to eradicate that. For us, if there is something you want to discuss around an action you've been given, my answer is going to be, and see what Jane thinks, is it's talk to the EQA. At first, it's a dialogue. Put your points. Was it a case of some evidence that wasn't seen that you've got? Was there a misunderstanding? And of course, come to my QA team as well. We have an appeal process. Again, that can be done informally, or as formal as needs to be. But I would say in the first instance, you should have hopefully a good relationship with the EQA. I would imagine it's not a surprise, the action that's come up there. If it has kind of come from left field, then I would suggest talking it over with your EQA. How does that sound, Jane, if a centre wants to query an action they've been given from a EQA activity?
Yeah, I would totally endorse that, and I would hope that the relationship is already there, and especially as we move forward to the face-to-face visits, we could actually sit down and discuss, and I would be happy as an EQA to point out references to documents, why that decision has been made, and help people address those action points. But certainly if there were any queries, I would be escalating it as an EQA to Paul, to yourself, really, because
absolutely
we answer to yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Jane. Okay, I'm just going to check the time, and I'm going to have one last look in the chat if a question's arrived lately.
If you'd like me, Paul, I can. I've read that question now, and I can answer it. So the question
Brilliant.
was asking.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The question was asking around if someone who has got an SO license but has also done the level 2 PI already, will they still need to do that at top up? And the answer is unfortunately yes, because obviously it's a new qualification from April. So as has always been the case, it would have to be the new unit. So unfortunately, they would still have to redo it, because the new PI unit obviously has had, again, the similar changes to assessments, changes to some of the content. So yes, they would have to do the top up, unless of course they decided to switch down to SO and we make that decision that we talked about earlier. But in this situation, they would have to still do it. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying. I just wonder if there's an overlap between the two questions themselves. Okay. What I wanted to do then, I want to share a question actually with our delegates today. So I'll move away. Okay. Okay. What I'd like to do for our colleagues that have joined today is post a little bit of advice for everyone else in the chat. So it doesn't have to be security qualifications. Maybe you have been around long enough to have been through the previous changes a few years ago. Maybe it's another sector or another area you've been in. But if you're going to give one piece of advice to centres on implementing any new suite of qualifications, what would that be? So mind if anyone would like to start filling into the chat in that bit, obviously the panel will have our say in a second as well, but keep those coming through. You're the people on the ground, and you're the people who'd be close to this, so be fascinated to hear if you've got any advice for this change. For me, it's always referring back to the documents, so you'll forgive us today for referring back to get training and other requirements. It's we're talking about a heavily regulated sector, so got to refer to the sector body. Tracy's here representing those today. So my one tip is look for your paperwork, look for your Bibles. They're what you need to rely on. If you've got any doubts, I'm not sure what to do here, then my advice is to read the documentation. Jane, one piece of advice when something new is changing. Have you been through some changes in your time?
Yep, and it's my usual one, and it was in the last webinar, to really have strong, robust internal verification processes. Good centres always have a good IQA, I found in my years of experience.
Yeah, message received and understood. And Tracy, from your point of view, if there's one takeaway that people need to be aware of, or one bit of advice as we go into the new world?
Absolutely. Well, I've just put the link to all the new guidance in the chat, because I know
Fantastic.
that our gov.uk move has not made things easy to find. But yeah, I guess my advice is, if you're not sure, is ask the question, even if you think it's a dumb question, because often it's not. So go to your EQA, go to your awarding organisation, or even come to the SIA. I mean, obviously, that's one of the reasons why I've said I would happily join this. We want to get the message out there. We want to help centres as best we can. And the best way we can do that is by talking to each other. So I suppose that's my advice, really.
Brilliant. And yeah, that I would suggest people follow that one. Okay, thank you for sharing the ones that are coming through. Delegates can take the time to read those through and take them on board. And I just want to bring things to a close then now with one final bit of interaction. Yes, you've worked hard today. So I have the question that we had earlier, I'd like to throw back to you again. Okay, so how prepared do you now feel for the new qualification launch? Same rating again, from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most prepared. Have we managed to shift the dial? And hopefully that's the case, but obviously be honest, share your thoughts. I'm an assessments and QA person, so data is very valuable to me, and any feedback I can get is going to be spot on. I'm not doing very scientifically, but the band was certainly around 3, wasn't it? Around 40% earlier, and now it looks like it's shifted towards 4 and 5. So that's really pleasing to see. It's in large part thanks to Jane and Tracy. So thank you very much for your attendance today. Tracy, thank you for all the support from SIA. It is much appreciated.
Very welcome.
No, it has been great. Thank you. And brilliant. Thanks, Jane. Advice as ever. And you can see our EQAs, I wasn't kidding, are the people to go to if you have any questions around your EQA activities. They know their stuff. And thank you for everyone who's been posting those questions in the Q&A and the chat function as well. Much appreciated. The knowledge is there. We can make sure that's shared with everybody. Apologies, even during my multitasking, I missed your question, but tons of ways for you to get in touch with me. Let me know if you need a phone call or a meeting. Anytime we can set that up as well. So a final thank you for everyone for taking part. I hope you found it useful. If you're new to us, hopefully that's the start of our journey together. If you're one of our existing centres, well, you know what we can do, and hopefully we'll continue that going forwards in April. Thank you, everybody.